Welcome to this video that is part one of a two-part series looking at the count functions available in Excel. In this video we'll be looking at three different functions, count, counter and count blank, and then we'll be looking at a couple of more advanced formulas in the second part of the video will be coming shortly. So to jump straight in, we'll go through each one of our formulas or functions, talking about the purpose and how the formula is structured. And then, as always, we'll jump into Excel to go through some examples. So the first one we have is count. So the purpose of count is to count the number of cells that contain numbers. So this formula will only count in your defined range the number of cells that contain a number. The definition of the formula is broken down. I'll give an example of having multiple values that you can enter. So this is where you could separate it by a comma, enter separate cell references to count those cells, or separate ranges in which you wish to count. But as you'll see in our example, for all of our formulas, especially these basic ones, we'll be selecting a range as a whole, so one range in which we're going to do our count based upon. And at the bottom there you can see the formula in its entirety. The next formula we have is counter, so just count with the A on the end. The purpose of this formula is to count the number of non-blank cells. So like our previous formula of count, where that was only counting where we had a number present in the cell, this is now going to count all cells within our range that are not blank, so they contain some form of a value or a formula or even a space. So that the actual cell reference is not itself blank. And the same as count, it does have the ability to enter separate references or ranges to perform your counts, but we will be, as we mentioned before, we will look at the range as a whole. And you can see the formula for counter down at the bottom of the screen there. And the last formula we have to look at is count blank. The purpose of this formula is to count the number of cells that are blank. So we're kind of covering off all aspects really with these three functions. The main and only input for this is the range. So this is the range in which to count blank cells. And as you'll see again at the bottom there, we've got the formula in its entirety. So you can see what it looks like. Okay, so what we'll do is jump straight into Excel and carry on with some examples. So now in Excel, we're going to do three examples to demonstrate how each of the formula works. Just for reference, we have in column G and H, we have the function that we're going to be using, and we can see the purpose captured there for what it is. So count, the purpose is to count the number of cells that contain a number. Counter is to count the number of non-blank cells, so all cells that contain a value, a formula, an error, any value or any content within that cell, those are the cells that will get counted. And count blank is going to do the opposite, so it's going to count how many cells are blank within our defined range. Over the left hand side in columns A to C at the top here, we've got a table of some sales information. What might seem familiar from our video we did recently on the sum functions available in Excel. So again, if you haven't seen that, please look at our available videos and you can watch it in there. So what we have in column A is the day of the week, what a sale was or sales were made. We've got the sales representative or the salesperson in column B, so the name of them, and then we can see in column C the total value of the sales they made. So in row 2 we've got Tim has made £100 worth of sales on Monday, and so on and so forth. And some of these, or the next one down, row 3 for example, has no sales information recorded. And also, we'll come to it more later on, is in row 7 we can see that no sales information is added, and actually there's some text in there what says missing, so obviously it's missing information, and we'll come back to the importance of that when we get to the formula. So let's answer now our three questions at the bottom here in rows 13 to 15, what are going to be our examples. Each one will be using a different formula. So the first one we're going to do is use the count formula to identify how many cells within column C contain a number value, or not a number value, but contain a number. So to do that, we're going to do our equal sign and enter count, open our brackets, And what we can do is we could either type in this range, but I'm just going to click and drag. So we've got from row 2 of column C down to row 9. So C2 colon C9 to give that range. We'll then close our brackets and hit enter. And we can see the answer to how many cells contain numbers is 6. So we can check that by seeing, yes, we can see there's a 75, a 25, what's 2. We then got the third being £80, the fourth being £125, the fifth being £75, and the sixth being £100. So that's been able to give us that answer relatively quickly. The next one we're going to look at is how many cells are not empty. So whereas our first formula count is only going to count those that have a number within them, what this second formula here for counter is going to do is count every cell that obviously contains a value. So you'll notice that in this formula it'll actually pick up the value we have in row 7, the text of missing. So we do equals, this time count with an A, open our brackets, and select exactly the same range of C2 to C9 and do close brackets. So there we go, we can see that now we have a different value to what we had in row 13. So we've now got 7 because we're now counting the addition of this text here of missing. If we were to remove missing, so if we just do clear contents there, you can see that the two are now going to match because there's only 6 numbers or 6 cells containing numbers in our range, of which there's only also 6 that contain an actual value because the other 2 are blank. But if we put missing back into here, then our second formula, the counter formula, is going to also pick that one up as well. This is really useful when you're trying to validate your information or just do some checks on your data, because it allows you to understand if there are any cells that contain this missing. Simply put, because if you're expecting this column C, to contain all numbers, obviously your count would have picked up the 6, but the 7 is a good proof of concept to make sure that there's nothing in there that shouldn't be, obviously indicated by the difference in numbers. So the last one we have here, and is going to be our last formula to look at, is count blank. So to do that, we enter our equal sign, we do count and blank. And as you'll know, as soon as you start typing, you'll see a list of options that come available of all the different formulas. But yeah, to keep it simple, just type in there count blank and open your brackets. And one more time, we're going to enter exactly the same range of C2 to C9, close our brackets, and then hit enter. Okay, so we now have our last question answered. So in that range, we can see that there is indeed only one blank cell, what is here in row 3, what that's picked up. So we can now see that we've got a total of 6 cells in our range that contain a number, 7 cells contain are not empty, or not blank you could say, and then the last one here for how many, what is the number of, or count of those with no value at all, and we've got 1. What it's worth pointing out as well is if in this cell here of C3 where we're currently counting is blank, if I was to just go in there and enter a space and hit enter, you'll now notice that our numbers have updated because it's counted as obviously not being, or it's no longer empty because it has got some content in there in the means of a space in this example. So what we can see is we now have no empty cells because none of them are completely blank. And also our count here in the middle here for how many cells are not empty is obviously going to go up as well, because we've now got that as another one being counted towards it. But if we just remove that out, hit enter again, we can see our numbers are now back updated. So these are some really useful formulas that you can use if you're validating information or just to understand how many rows you've got in the data set. Admittedly, it's not too hard to do that counting manually based on our data size where it only goes over 9 rows. But these are some real useful formulas to get used to, as they are really good options for using later on when we get a bit more technical in using some different formulas. But there you go. So that concludes part 1 of our look at Excel count formulas. Part 2 will be coming soon when we look at some more advanced formulas that allow us to add criteria to the formulas to define what we want to count. So in order to not miss that, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and please don't forget, drop us a comment below if you have any questions, or alternatively reach out to us on our Facebook page. And we'll see you soon.